Hello, very nice to be here with you again. A couple of weeks ago we did one of these live presentations and I've received a lot of inquiries about the context of that presentation. So I wanted to follow it up and talk about how a number of things works. So one of the things that we talked about in that last session was the word truth. Whose truth? What is truth? How do I know truth? And in the context of truth, right now, from a spiritual standpoint, there are lots and lots of people who are coming up with truths. Not to say whether they are or aren't truths, but many people are finding a lot of information to talk about. Many people are beginning to experience this template, this environment, this concept, the foundation of this fifth dimensional consciousness that is beginning to be really very much ingrained into the flow of who we are. It's not necessarily something that you see differently, but it's a very fundamental change, very subtle at this point because there's an awful lot of external noise that is really quite loud in the world. But this fifth dimensional structure is beginning to allow for each of us to start to perceive our own truth. And in that context, one of the things that people are doing is they're starting to have awarenesses, thoughts, considerations. There's many people that are beginning to channel in terms of they're getting quiet and they're having a conversation. With who is not necessarily always defined. Sometimes it's archangelic, sometimes it's ascended masters, sometimes it's the guy next door who died last week who hasn't really realized he's left his body yet. It's that funny sounding, but very accurate when you begin to look at how the whole process of disincarnated beings really begin to play, beings that don't have physical bodies. But that's very much a topic for another time. So in the course of what is truth, one of the experiences that we are all having is being able to figure out how to discern what is my truth. Because to a great extent in our upbringing, in our third dimensional reality, our truth has been very much created by the mom, dad, teacher, minister of life who said, this is truth. This is how we do it. This is what we do. This is the church we go to. These are the people we talk to. This is the food we eat. This is your truth. To a great extent, many of us who are very sensitive, you being very sensitive, having a spiritual alignment, being aware of energy, aware of people's thoughts, aware of people's actions, many have the capacity to clairsentient feel whether this is an energy that's supporting me or not supporting me. Are those people mad at me? Are they happy? Whatever it is. And we begin to create perspectives about, are we safe? Do we fit in? How do we work? Many of you are very sensitive. You see things, circumstances, not necessarily futures. And in that circumstance, you begin to realize this is right or this isn't right, this is how things work or not. And in the process of your observing the external world, you come to many conclusions. And you begin to treat those conclusions as truth. Now, one of the things I know about truth is it's truth at this minute, but it may not be truth in the next minute. So when people begin to gravitate to truth, very much third dimensional concept, all right, this is what's true. This is how I fit in. This is how I engage with people. This is how people like me. When I'm like this, the truth, they like me. I'm okay. I'm safe. But that's not necessarily your path. It's the environment of how we have learned to experience ourselves. And where I watch spiritual people get a lot of confusion is they play the game of the external world to fit in, because that's what we're told to do. But the internal world is not satisfied in the process of playing this aspect of truth. And so it's a little bit of a challenge. And right now, in a way, it's a little bit more of a challenge than it has been in the past. Because with all of the truth that's floating around with a little t, many people at all levels, we accept the outside world, we figure out where we fit in, where we don't fit in. That's not my truth. I don't agree with those people, how they think, but this is my truth. In the place where many of us play, we are looking for a commonality. I like you because you're like me. And because I like you, this must be truth. So spiritual folks begin to listen to the channels, begin to read the books, a lot of new information coming about. We're still seeking out the truth. And as you begin to play in that game, you get new pieces of information. And because they feel good, and my friend over there told me, it must be a truth. And so, even in the spiritual circles, we begin to create something I keep referring to as horizontal spiritualism. It's not necessarily growth, it's me too. Oh, that's really good. Me too. Now I have something to talk to my friend about, something new. Look what I just found out. Oh, new meditation, etc., etc. But is there truth? Your truth, whatever that means. And is there energy and information in that new piece of information that allows you to step into your evolution, step into another layer of consciousness that provides you a new piece of information? Now, here's one of the first things that I watch happen is we don't let go of truth very easily. We observe something, we learn something, we like it, it feels good, all my friends like it, so it's the truth. And I believe this. And then we really don't go back to assess it. We don't go back to allow it. And many times a new piece of information that, if allowed or heard or considered in the context of, is this a new truth, that overrides and expands upon my old truth. And so we've learned in the 3D to really not let go very easy of different considerations. Now, we've also learned how to engage in different ways that allow our beliefs to kind of dominate our circumstance. And mostly it's in the 3D aspect of, I'm going to go to someplace outside of myself to find my fitting in. But there's a parable that I've always enjoyed, and it was spoken by Lee Carroll, somebody I have a lot of enjoyment in and have a lot of respect for the work that Lee has done channeling a being called Cryon of magnetic service. I always found that fascinating. What does a magnetic service mean? In my reality, I asked the question and began to search it out a long time ago, and it was an extraordinary answer. But in this particular parable, it was called the Two Warriors. And there was a period of time, the parable starts by saying, on the earth there was an awareness of this new age, something coming, something new coming forth. But at the same time, there was an awareness of the dark forces. And all these warriors knew the dark forces were going to come at some point. And so they prayed, they asked, and one day the warriors found, there were two groups of warriors, and each group of warrior received a package. And the package basically said, there's a sword, and there's an armor, and there's a shield. And both groups rejoiced because now they had the tools to take on the darkness. And that sword, as they perceived it, was this sword of truth. It cut through everything. No secrets, no lies, nothing could be hidden. The sword was really terrific. And the shield was the knowledge of how to engage, how to discern, how to present yourself, how to move around in certain circumstances. And the armament, well, the armament was the wisdom of God, creator, source, all that is, however you define that for yourself. And so here was these tools. And at one point, the dark forces showed up. And the first group went to the box and opened the box. And right there was a big instruction that said, some assembly required. And they got very concerned because the sword was too quick and the shield really moved all over the place, had so many choices. And the armament was really heavy. And the dark forces overran that group. But the other group, long time ago, opened the box and began to practice, and the sword was heavy, and yet it was swift and it was quick, and the shield had lots of variations to discern, to choose, to step away, to engage, to admire, to appreciate, to be firm. Kind of words we'll play with in a moment. And the armament, basically, in its heaviness, really they began to recognize that many of the beliefs they hold, many of the thoughts they had, are not internal thoughts, not alignments with the wisdom of the Creator, but very much engaged in what the mom, dad, teacher, minister, my words, said was truth. And they perfected this skill of the sword, and they recognized that the truth worked with the wisdom and the knowledge, and all operated as one. Not one tool, but one flow of many tools working as one. And the dark forces came and saw and fled. And there never was a battle. The dark forces simply disappeared into the third dimensional reality. Wonderful parable. Has had a lot of balance for me to really kind of look at that in my own life. But one of the things that happens is there are many spiritual people that are still seeking the truth, not opening the box. And in that process of seeking the truth, we do something that, let me define this, and as I define it, hear it lightly. Don't treat it as the truth. Now, one of the things about me presenting things over the years, I've found that people believe me. People give up their seniority to me. People say he has the truth. So let me caution you here. Don't believe me. Just hear this. If it makes sense and it resonates and it kind of plays into your ability to take a step, use it, please. But don't believe me. So this aspect of how we move around, continuing to look around, and one of the things that happens in the third dimension is we have this word prayer. And we pray. And in that process of praying, many times we really only pray when I need something. I need a healing. I need a direction. I need something fixed. And we pray. And in that process of praying, we hope that something is going to happen. We hope. Well, in the third dimension, that's kind of how we've been taught. That's kind of how religions have brought us to a certain place. Pray for what you want. It will come to you. Well, the truth is, pray and it will come to you. But the next part of it is, people don't listen. And so we ask often for things, but the third dimension is very structured, is very rigid, it's very much in fear. Fear is the dominant vibration in the third dimension. It's not love, it's fear. Now, understand, for many of you who haven't heard me talk like this before, the third dimension is, let's call it a box for just simplicity. It has rules and definitions, and it has functions. It operates on a time structure that's very different than how time works in other ways. It's linear time, past, present, future, then you die. In third dimension, when you really begin to watch people move in third dimension, they live in the past and in the future, very little in present time. In that process of going away from yourself, trying to be accepted by the outside, fitting in, I need them to like me in order to be safe, I begin to look for the truths that create the convenience of my moving around. But many of those truths become the armament that we walk around with, the armament that isn't who we are, isn't aligned in the wisdom of the Creator. It is how we think we're supposed to engage. So this aspect of prayer, to a great extent, gets never answered for many. It's really, in order to have prayer answered, you can't sit in the third dimensional space. You have to move into a quiet space, a place where the energy flows, resonates, begins to align with who you are in this particular space. But the other half of prayer is listening. Prayer is very much the asking. The meditation is very much the listening. But when I watch people meditate to a great extent, those seeking, the meditation takes 20, 30 minutes just to get quiet. And then as you get quiet, many times you're thinking. It's, well, what do I do? And what's the answer? There's no quiet in that layer of thinking, that layer of meditation. It's really in a space where in the third dimension, you're constantly battling the noise, the dramas, the frustrations, the worries. Am I okay? In order to really begin to have this alignment with asking and receiving, it actually begins to happen comfortably in a fifth dimensional space. And I said a few minutes ago, that fifth dimension is beginning to be very structured in order for us to experience it. And the thing about the fifth dimension, it has ease and flow and mobility and flexibility. It has beauty and calmness and serenity, and it's founded in ease. It's not in worry, it's in just simply ease. And it's in that space that prayer begins to be something really interesting. It's a place where you sit with the wisdom of that sword. How do I align myself? What do I do? And I'll talk in a minute about building this platform that starts to allow the wisdom to accept the knowledge, to begin to discern with the sword, if you would. So people have asked over the last few weeks, well, tell me more. How do I become this person that's not vibrating in horizontal spiritualism? Because I get that. I keep searching and searching and searching, and I really, I still find myself in lack. My rent's due, my relationship's not really working. In fact, my relationship's working less because I don't know what to do. So in that context, it's really about repositioning your attention point. It's finding the space where you start to do some things different. So let me explain, in the course of mastering alchemy, that ability to kind of step out of that third dimensional space into this fifth dimensional space and begin to have a sense of asking and receiving. See, there's another aspect of this. People ask and ask and ask, but it's very funny. Can you have what you ask for? Everybody goes, oh yeah, I can have that. I need money. Oh, actually, it's not money you need at all. It's kind of an alignment, and everything falls into place. But it's in the needing, and the I want and I have to. That's all a motion. That's a pushing against. It's not a balance. It's not an ease. And so there are a number of things that are very available. And it's a shift in focus. It's really having an awareness. Again, don't believe me, but hear me. That third dimensional space is very much in resistance, in fear, in uncertainty, self-doubt, self-judgment. I don't know how to engage. What if they get angry at me? Lots of conditions. And just being. When you step into that fifth dimensional space, you do it in a space of ease. Now, so the real question is, well, how do I get there? How do I get into a space where I can see that world that I'm concerned about, that I live in, that I work in, have a relationship in? But how do I step out of it? How do I be in the world but not of the world? And so some of the tools, the really fundamental tools that are very much available to you that allow the transition out of the third dimension. And let me just talk about a couple of those things. One of the most important understandings that I have watched over years is understanding where you start and where you finish. Now, in real terms, you don't start and finish anywhere. But there is a point in defining your space. And it becomes really important because if you can define your space, you can begin to discern, is it true or is it not true? Does it work for me or does it not work for me? You begin to do it on your terms, not on the terms of everybody else's opinion. So one of the fundamental tools, and I tell people in Mastering Alchemy that are stepping into that living light body after lots of walking this pathway, one of the most important tools, and I'll give you two, is being able to discern, where do I start and stop? And it's right at the edge of your aura. You're a bubble living with lots of other bubbles. But when you can't discern what is your energy and what is your truth, because you don't define that bubble, everybody else's truths and lies and energies and goods and bads and rights and wrongs are overwhelming you. You don't really have a good means of discerning. So this is a free piece of information on the website and is well articulated, but it's basically, here's the edge of your aura. You stick your hand straight out in front of you, turn your palm towards yourself, and that point, and it goes all the way around you, begins to be, from here to my heart is me, and everything on the other side is Shakespeare's theater for my entertainment. Now, isn't that interesting? My entertainment, not my fear. As you begin to create this, and we use a tool called a rose, just like a rose, the flower, as the point of delineation. But understanding that piece allows for another couple of very interesting configurations. Once a long time ago, when you had it together a lot more as a being in a body, there was a geometry that structured the aura. And the geometry is called an octahedron. It's like a pyramid, 4 sides on the top, 4 sides on the bottom. That contained the aura. And so you began to be contained more or less in your own bubble, perceiving the outside world not from what it's going to do to you, but how it moves around. Another piece of this is when you begin to discern and have a sense of additionally being grounded, being in the center of your head, staying on your side of the rose. An important next step is building this wisdom, this shield, if you would, not as a protection device, but it's a platform. And as you begin to step onto this platform and you start to use alignments of the shield, and those alignments, as we know them, are very much words that you don't just think, but you feel. So what if you could build a platform that you could experience yourself in quiet, balance, certain, capable, gracious, happy, being able to own your own seniority, this is me, and basically create an energetic alignment that allows that platform to be how you step out of the I'm afraid, I don't know what to do, and begin to observe a reality. It's the stepping stone into this place where you start to let go of all of the I'm not okay. Now, we talk about this all the time, but two of the most important tools that a person can use in their own spiritual evolution is defining your space, defining where it more or less starts and stops from the standpoint of the edge of the rose. There is no start and stop in real defined terms, and begin to build this platform where you can step on as if stepping out of the flood and basically being in a comfortable, safe, well-defined space. It's in that place that this word prayer really shifts into an asking and into a structuring. You see, some assembly required on this journey. It's not a free ride. And it's in that place where you can begin to discern, create a platform, and begin to choose the alignment of how you wish to experience yourself. You begin to turn on the internal guidance system in the heart once again. That internal guidance system is the place you know intimately. It's the place that basically everybody says, let's jump off the cliff into the water, and something inside says, no, I don't think so. And, 3 people jump off and it didn't work out well. You listened. Internal guidance system. There's sometimes that internal guidance system, you get to the cliff and everybody says, oh, it's too much, and you look and that internal guidance system says, go for it. Jump, fly, experience yourself in the newness of what's available, that everybody else goes, no, that's not a good idea. Have you ever been told, no, it's not a good idea, but yet something in here went, oh yeah, I've got to do this. That's in that discerning your space, recreating the energy field. That octahedron is really easy to rebuild, and one of the things about it is it's an antenna. It begins to access these higher levels of consciousness. It begins to make it easier to sit at the table. It's your table. And ask, help me. And you invite in these different great beings, Yeshua, Metatron, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Mother Mary, Hannah, the Magdalens. They all come to your table. It's not their table. It's your table. It's in the heart. It's in a very specific place. It's a place where you ask and they answer. And then you choose the direction for yourself. So many people asked, well, how do I go about doing this? How do I find truth? What is my truth? My experience with thousands of people is you have to do something. It's not the new cool thing that somebody says. It's an engagement. It's an action. And stepping onto that platform and beginning to build these vibrations. Words like certain are not something, if I said, have you ever been certain? Oh yeah, I've been certain. I know what certain is. No, that's not the certain I'm talking about. It's the one where, do you know what certainty feels like? It's close your eyes, sit back, the body straightens up. It's a breath, and it's like, yes, I know what this feels like. I don't visit it often, but I know this place. You start to build the alignment with certain and seniority. This is who I am. All of a sudden, that antenna starts to provide information in a really amazing way. You begin to walk through the seams of all that noise and not so much get bumping into it. So let me kind of begin to wrap this up, and I'm interested in your questions. I think you have been told you can write in your question, and Roxanne's going to ask those questions in a moment. But let me just kind of add one more piece. You've watched the earthquakes. You've watched the hurricanes. You've watched the floods. You're watching the storms. You're watching global climate changes. You're watching extraordinary things that are going to continue to happen and increase. There are many shifts going on in both the external world and your internal world. In that internal world, the foundation that is really kind of even unconscious, it's the agreement with the external world. This is how it works. I do this. I don't do this. These are the rules. This is the law. This is the truth. I'm a good citizen. I am going to do that. And we believe these truths. Now, I'm going to be kind of sacrilegious here in one term, but if you believe the Constitution of the United States, for example, and that you have all these liberties and all these freedoms. You don't. Look around. Do you have the capacity to engage in those liberties? So what happens is we all go into agreement. I agree. I'm going to play by these rules. Most of the agreements that are now being shaken, not by changes in external politics or finances or things like that. It's the sun. It's the shift in this consciousness. The basic picture, the basic foundation that we are all in agreement with to play the third dimensional game is being taken apart pixel by pixel. There's an entirely new presentation that's flowing into this. It's very disruptive for people that are focused in the external world. The external world is very significantly shifting. Most don't see it. Most are in fear. Most are upset. Their status quo is being rocked. I don't feel safe. I'm not certain. And so what you're watching in the world is everybody, not everybody, but many hunkering down. I've got to pull back my boundaries. I've got to be nationalistic. I've got to be really safe. We don't want them. We only want these. You're watching it all over the world externally. But the same thing's going on internally. You can't continue to hold those stories of somebody else's truth and then try to live your life on them, because you're going to bump into walls. It's going to get harder and harder holding on to truths that simply may have been at one time, but are no longer. Finding that space of flexibility, that platform to discern and choose and observe from present time. Does this serve me now? It served me yesterday, but does it serve me today? Is it my truth today? And to a great extent, you're going to find the answer is it is not your truth. The next piece is, okay, what do I do? And it's in the okay, what do I do, that I grab back hold of my old truth. But what I'm proposing to you, what I'm pointing to, these energy tools, and there are many, many of them that allow you to begin to step on this platform, discern, own your space, and then navigate the seams in ways that you're going to find remarkable. They begin to allow you to kind of walk this spiraling staircase into that fifth dimension. The third dimension is falling away. Those truths that are no longer truths are being dismantled in your space. The key to them is, can you let them go? Can you begin to be excited about what's possible? I'm really interested in talking about something I'll do it the next time, is this whole level of technology and artificial intelligence. It is so much more than what it appears from just a simple technology magnificence. There's a lot of fear in it. There's a lot of excitement in it. Both are going to play out. But when you look at it from the fifth dimension and beginning to realize it's an engagement with the mind of Source, and you have access to it without all the technology. But we'll talk about that at another time. So this platform, this rose, I can't say those two tools enough, and I say them at the end of Mastering Alchemy, when people step into that living light body and begin to find themselves accessing and functioning in a fifth dimensional space. I still say the rose and the platform and the words are the tools that allow you to transition in a marvelous way. So there are more tools. The transitioning, putting the mental and emotional body back together, beginning to access and turn on the eye of Horus, beginning to engage in the upper 7 chakras, beginning to draw consciousness from the 8th chakra, beginning to find the sacred heart. All of those are aspects of your own internal guidance that have been forgotten, but not very difficult to turn them back on in this period of time. So let me come to a stopping place there. I'm interested in what you think. If you'd like to do more, I'm really excited about doing it. If you're interested in what is that AI all about, something I'm going to recommend you want to be interested in at all levels, email us, tell us on Facebook whether or not you're interested. So let me stop and turn this over to Roxanne and see what your questions might be.
Okay, so we actually have a number of questions here, Jim.
Yay.
Yeah, and they're really good. This one is from Deborah. Can one use their alignment to help another person?
Yeah. Now, so in a third dimensional space, many of us are healers and fixers and meddlers. Well, we want to help people. And in that space, many of us have learned how to say hello, and we see pain and suffering, and we really want to help. But that place you're observing from, I wish to help somebody else, is not a third dimensional space. It's a heart space. It's an alignment with you space. And so how do you do it when you begin to step into this fifth dimensional space? One of the things that I learned as a healer all through the process of the last 40 years or so, or even longer, is I used to think I was a good healer. I would get really extraordinary results, putting my hands on people, etc. And then it became really more and more obvious. I do nothing in terms of fixing somebody else. But what I understood I do is I'm able to create an alignment of energy, an alignment of well-being, a state of beauty, to show that person where their illness or their fear or suffering is, and basically say hello to it. Oh, you can let that go. This is how that works. Look, let's just open it up. We'll bring some green energy in. I didn't bring the green energy in. I just pointed to the color that was missing in their space. You want to be a great healer, a great assistant, a great person that uplifts and nurtures others. Healer, heal thyself, it says somewhere. It's the place where you can begin to be these words, gracious, kind, and sit there and use your skill sets to transform energy, to recreate energy, to mirror back to them where their well-being is actually placed, and then just hold that image. They will rise up to meet you and heal themselves. So it begins to take on a little different shift from all the things we've learned. But once you recognize the power of holding a vibrational field for somebody else to step into, and you do it in amusement, and you do it in funny stories, and you kind of laugh as you're doing it, and they meet you there. And every time you've done that with people in that space, they say, oh, I love being around you. I feel so much better when I walk away. Yeah, they do. But it's not about what you did. It's about what you presented for them to do. Very big difference, a wonderful experience to be found.
Jim, this next question is from Andrea. Does disconnection to the truth indicate a high level of fear is present? Fear of the unknown? And if so, can being in the present moment help us?
Yeah, absolutely. It's when I don't know what to do, when I'm not aligned with my own internal guidance system that tells me, pay attention, slow down, go faster, enjoy this, this isn't going to work. It's that internal guidance system in the heart that's talking to you. But what we've done is we've went to mom, dad, teacher, minister, and then just made it a means of validating ourselves in the external world. And that fear, that anxiety that's sitting in the body, to a great extent, is you being misaligned with you. Now, one of the things that's happening right now is that's going to get more uncomfortable. Really, hear me please on this one. This is kind of a truth from my observation. It's those energies, the sun and all of the changes in the shift of consciousness, they are pushing on you. You're going to be driven into spaces where if you keep resisting, you are not going to like these results. I can pretty much guarantee you. Everything is being kind. It's nurturing you. It's guiding you. It's saying, let go of that resistance, that fear, that judgment, that anger, the resentments that you hold. Let go of those. You don't like them, and they're like bubbles stuck under a cup under the water. Find that fifth dimensional certainty and ease and happy, and amazingly, those cups turn upside down and the bubbles are released and gone forever. There's a trust in yourself that is really what's missing. And so that's why I present this platform of beginning to just align with words, and that feels good. I like myself when I'm in this space. And all of a sudden that space begins to be the space that everything starts to being perceived from. The fear begins to fall away. The anxiety lessens. The opportunity for new steps come into play. But some assembly required, and it's the place where that courage really comes into place that says, try it. The purpose in Mastering Alchemy of creating the platform early on is because it gets done in a playful space, and it's like, yeah, I like this. This feels really good. And it starts to be connected. And you add another piece and another piece and another piece, and all of a sudden you realize I'm feeling pretty good. And a lot of that anxiety, I haven't felt it for a few weeks. And you realize I'm not feeling it anymore because it's gone by the realignment of your well-being versus your attention to fear. Hope that helps.
Jim, this next question is from McGuire. Is it possible that I flow between conscious and unconscious connection to the answers and energy you describe? I am taking action frequently and discerning choices. Am I evolving in consciousness?
Yeah. So what you just said is, I'm beginning to be in present time. I'm not so much in my past and future. I'm right here. In order to discern, in order to choose, you have to be in present time. Now, present time is an interesting thing. We'll talk about it another time. But there's 5 different configurations of present time, not just one. And time is an application. It's not a fixed absolute truth. And so when you realize you can move in and out of time, you can change time, you can utilize time as a creative force, that begins to be a pretty potent space. So when you're in this transition, there are a couple things happening, and I've been hearing this more and more from people, and it's kind of fascinating, is people have said, gee, I wrote something in my book, and when I opened the book, it wasn't there. Somebody came up to me and said, here's your umbrella, you lost it. And I don't ever remember being in any place where my umbrella was being used, let alone losing it. And people are saying this over and over, and it started a couple of weeks ago more and more. And it's as if time is out of phase. I'm in this space, and I'm in this space. And it's a very interesting place. And the answer to it is stop and really get into present time, and then take your next step. So time is beginning to play in this. And so, yes, the answer is you can be having numbers of experiences, not in phase time, but in beginning to shift yourself from this 3rd dimensional state to a 5th dimensional state of well-being.
Jim, this next question is from Janine. I'm in a place where I'm making a huge jump, and I hear the voices of others, as you say, saying, oh no, that's not a good idea. The only way I can deal with that right now is to stay away from those people and try not to engage in conversation, because when I do, I find I get pulled down by them. But I can't always avoid them. How do I deal with them in a spontaneous moment? It's hard to walk away sometimes, and am I just running away when I try to avoid them?
Yeah, great question. So this is one of the places I can answer this kind of 2 ways. That rose begins to give you a tremendous sense of capacity. You just stay on your rose, and they can be screaming, yelling, pointing to you. They can be abusing you, all those things. If you stay on your side of the rose, and there's a structure, you be on your side, allow them on their side. As you stay on your side, grounded, center your head, all of a sudden you realize that it's kind of fascinating what they're saying, and you actually don't have to engage. The other part of that is that internal guidance system is saying, yes, this is what I'm all about. When you start to become you begin to change the agreements. So I had somebody this morning for breakfast, and she says, oh, I'm in neutral. One of our students, I'm in neutral, and I'm really maintaining neutral. And my husband never comes to me. I always have to go to him. He's controlling, he's this, he's that. And basically, I'm in neutral. But in fact, what she was doing is she was not listening to her own truth that said, I'm not being paid attention to. I'm in a suspended space. I'm not having my experience. And just beginning to have that conversation, it began to be really clear. I'm not doing my truth in this situation. So the place where you start to discern, you're going to lose some of your friends, because as you start to get bright and capable and begin to act on your own internal guidance system, they get really nervous because you're not playing by the game anymore. And so numbers of things happen. They throw rocks at you. They try to control you. They try to calm you down. And definitely there's something wrong with you. You should know better than this. They're basically expressing their fear in order to feel good for themselves. To a great extent, they don't have any consideration of you in that space at all. So it's a place where the rose allows all of that to be on the other side, and your ability to stay calm in your truth. And you can say, well, thank you. I'm just kind of playing with this. I'm not sure I'm going to do it. I'll get back to you and tell you what the results are. That satisfies a lot of people. You just engaged with them. It's not that you're telling a lie or not telling the truth. You're just simply saying, I'll get back to you. And then go about your business. Allow them to be entertained. You don't have to prove yourself or simply define yourself. Yourself is for yourself. You can say, thank you, I'll get back to you. And then go about your business and see what happens.
Jim, this question is from Christopher. When I was a child, my emotions ran strong, and I had to really work on controlling them so they wouldn't get me in trouble. As a result, I've had trouble using emotions to manifest. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can be said about this. One of the things that happens is people get in other people's space. And a lot of times your truths, for example, aren't even your truths. A lot of times the thoughts you think, they're not even your thoughts. But many times the emotions you feel are this aspect of called clairsentience, the ability to feel emotions or thoughts. And many times in that anxiety a little kid gets, it's everybody else's anxiety being run through their body. And as that anxiety runs through, we just accept it as that's what I am. And we never pay attention to it in considering it's somebody else's anxiety. And so you take drugs, you do all kinds of therapy, you do many things, and it doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is it's not yours. And so this is, again, where mastering alchemy becomes very, very valuable. You learn to discern. And in numbers of steps, level 2, particularly, you begin to get to a place where you can adjust. This isn't mine, so remove it. It's not complicated. It's not therapy. It's not painful. Or you don't have to go back through all the memories. You just realize this isn't even my energy. Call on the 8th ray, you call on the 4th, 5th, and 6th ray. You use a sound template that's astonishingly effective called the El Shaddai, an energetic form that just neutralizes many of these things when they're running through somebody's body and they don't belong to them. So a lot of tools available to basically bring a person back to balance and calmness, because in that out-of-state balance, most of those thoughts and beliefs you think are not yours. And they begin to be what you live on, and that's not very comfortable.
Jim, this question is from Jen. Is it normal to feel disconnected and maybe a little guilty as I move away from other people to my happy place?
Yeah. So what happens is, am I hurting them? Am I letting them down? Am I disappointing them? What you're doing as you begin to find your happy place, those alignments and platforms of words, you begin to interrupt the agreement that you've had with people. Now, a lot of times when you think about numbers of your friends, they're kind of association with people because you haven't found anybody else to have association with. Do you really want to hang out with those people? If you had a choice without hurting their feelings and just kind of stepping away from them, would you? And if the answer is yes, then do it. But I don't know how to do that. I am going to hurt their feelings. That's the guilty space. So these words guilt and blame are two sides of a coin. And generally neither one of those have anything to do with you. Those are learned strategies, learned experiences. They're not even yours for the most part. But when you begin to create a stability and call back your energy, be seen you're in your energy, you can begin to say hello to people in a way that says, you know, I'm kind of moving on. It's really been nice doing this, but I'm going to move on. And sometimes it's hard because it's husbands and wives and kids. But as you begin to find your certainty, your capableness, and mostly your seniority, and you find graciousness and happy and kindness as feelings, you start weaving those into the shield. And the shield allows you, in the parable, to basically align yourself in a way you can say, hello, I see you, and here's what I'm going to be doing next. You don't have to offend them, you don't have to hurt them. You can do it very elegantly. But that's part of understanding the platform and beginning to recognize how to use energy in a way that is kind and assisting without upsetting the entire apple cart. Learning how to use energy and direct it with different vibrations is a skill set. You know this, everybody knows this, but we forgot. And you've never been given permission to do it as a kid for the most part. This begins to be a place of allowing you to create, be the artist on your own canvas.
Jim, I have a couple people asking a similar question about their sleep space, that it's changing.
Yeah.
And they're wanting to know if they're letting go of a 3D belief that it requires X amount of sleep. Could it be related to the shift that's happening on the planet? And then what to do about it? Just allow it?
Well, the sleep space is a really unique place. It's part of the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is a thought realm. It is not a physical realm. And so in that thought realm and in the sleep space, kind of a little bit overlapping, all the thoughts ever thought that did not manifest as an action. Have you ever asked yourself, you think lots of thoughts, you have lots of opinions, you have lots of judgments, you have lots of, gee, I wish that person was dead, or gee, they should this, or why don't they that? But you don't act on it. You ever ask yourself, where does a thought go when you're done thinking the thought? Because it goes somewhere. It doesn't go poof into the air and it's gone. Thought has form and density. And it goes into this fourth dimensional thought realm. One of the things that's happening in that fourth dimensional thought realm, it also acts as the emotional body of the planet Earth. Now think about all the wars and thoughts and rape and murder and incest and all the really ugly thoughts people think in the third dimension. They go into this thought realm. And they have a magnetic aspect to them where they are attracted to all the other thoughts that are like that thought. So you get these really long strings of thought that kind of form a spider web all over the earth. There are many people who have come to the planet that are warriors, in a manner of speaking, and in that sleep space they are dismantling this. There's a lot of instruction in the sleep space to people to start to understand that it's like you don't go into a room, as Esther Hicks says often, and turn on the dark switch. You go into the room and turn on the light switch. And when you turn on the light switch, there's no more darkness. And so this skill set, this is a piece in Mastering Alchemy we touch on also, is it's not about going and being the warrior and going into the dream and engaging with the dream and fighting in the dream and trying to overcome in the dream. You get exhausted. It's a whole lot easier to go into the dream and turn on the light switch. I'm being really serious. Basically, can you manage this space where you step into the valley of the shadow of death, as it says somewhere, and fear no evil? And the answer is very much yes. But the disruption in the sleep space is affecting everybody in the sleep space. So some are more sensitive, some are less sensitive, but your sleep space is changing. It's mostly because of the shift. And if you can get 8 hours of sleep, please try to do so, because the body needs it to make its physical adjustments.
Jim, this is from Mark. I'm an artist, and when I listen, I receive inspiration around what to paint.
Yeah.
Then the client shows up to buy. I'd like to be there more often. Before I know it, I'm sucked into 3D, and I don't know how I got there. How do I quickly get back to the zone?
Well, let me tell you about a shift that is occurring to everybody. And so I'm not exactly answering the question as the question is being asked. But one of the things happens as you begin to build this platform and you stay on your side of the rows, you begin to see what's going on in the world, and you begin to realize more and more that has nothing to do with me. Oh, I have engaged in it, I've been part of it, but it really has nothing to do with me. And you begin to create I'm going to use separation from the noise of the game, the dramas, the fears. And all of a sudden you start to find that the next step is you start to realize I can influence myself. I can adapt a different posture or a different vibration or a different awareness. I can align myself with thoughts differently. And in that process, you begin to be more and more in the world, but not of the world. Now, the part that I'm talking to your answer is, as you start to let go of more and more of the baggage, you actually lose a lot of your friends or those people that you hang out with, but do you really want to keep hanging out with them? And generally the answer is no. And so they begin to fall away. You also find that a lot of I'm not okay begins to fall away. And you start to find yourself in a place that's a lot quieter and disengaged. If you can allow that and begin to play with it, we have a lot of instruction about how to do that, something very specific happens. You start to find that what you think comes to you. You begin to find yourself saying, yeah, it'd be fun to go to the movies. And then the next day somebody knocks on the door and says, hey, I have 2 tickets to the movies. It would be fun to go to that place for dinner, and all of a sudden you find yourself in front of the place going to dinner. So everything comes to you, and you start to realize, I didn't do anything. I didn't work for what's coming to me. And more begins to come to you. But that is a pronounced shift from I have to engage, I need their approval, I have to say this because it's what's going to keep my job, the one you usually hate. And all of a sudden you start to step back from that and realign, and you start to realize, gee, I think I'd like to have a new job. And you look down on the table and here's an announcement for a new job that's, gee, I didn't see that piece of paper there before. Everything comes to you. And when you start playing the game of everything comes to you, you can't do it in fear and baggage and I'm not okay and self-doubt and all those things are leaving. Everything comes to you. And then you begin to understand, you hold out your hand and the apple appears. And it's very magical, not being magic. It's very structured in alignments that you start to understand conceptually how to use the 5th dimension, the 6th dimension, how to think in the concepts of the 8th chakra, 9th chakra. You begin to be a new person, not playing in the fear and the dramas. I hope that helps.
Jim, it's been about an hour, so let's let
Wow.
this one be our last question. This is from Julie. Could you talk about the young children and how these 5D children will be affected when their 3D parents are in such resistance?
Well, you're talking about right now, because the 3D parents are in resistance and they don't know what to do with a lot of the young kids. But this has been happening all through, ever since 1987 in the harmonic conversions. You've been getting new layers of kids coming in to do different things. Now these kids are very much structured in the 5th dimension, although they're somewhat confused many times because they see the 3rd dimension. They are unsure what to do in some cases because they know well-being and then they see parents arguing or saying, you must do this, this is the rules. But for the most part, the kids that are coming in after the year 2012, they are simply wired differently. And these are the kids that are going to basically, in the next 20 years, 30 years, the ones that are coming in now, if you could go into suspended animation right now and come back in 30 years, you wouldn't recognize the planet. You won't recognize how people function. You will not recognize that there is no real fear dramas anymore. They all went away during the transition. But be really clear, the transition, you are in it. It is going to get much more uncomfortable. On an internal manner, if you keep trying to hold on to what was, and in an external manner, if you continue to try to hold on to the status quo of greed, domination, enslavement, sexism, racism, and all of those kind of things, the world is not acceptable to the new kids. But the new kids aren't even arguing with it because they're in that fifth dimensional space where there is no fear. The word safety doesn't even really exist in the fifth dimensional, and trust is not an issue because there's nothing to distrust, there's nothing unsafe, and the ability to perceive all the noise that is still there, they just allow it because it's not part of who they are. Right now in the transition, some are confused, some are being hurt because the parents are saying, here is the truth, but many are excelling in places that are absolutely astonishing. As a parent, it's always been my awareness that you recognize that little kid as it just has a little body and you have a big body, but it's 10 times your size. You allow that kid to fall down on their nose and you get down there on the floor with them and you go, wow, that didn't work real good. I wonder what else we could do. And allow them to find the answer without you telling them, and especially if you can stay away from the good and the bad and the right and the wrong, and you should, because they don't resonate with those. Give them the opportunity to tell you how the world is going to be, and they will. So the kids, in a way, are the least of the considerations on the plate today. So let's come to a stopping place. I hope this was answering many of the questions that a lot of you had. This whole issue of truth, it's flexible, it's moving. Where it is true today, in fourth, fifth dimension, it may not be true this next minute. Allow it to not be true and ask the question, well, what's the bigger truth? How do I make this enjoyable and fun, and how do I have a good time and love myself? Because if you can't like yourself, you can't love yourself, the game is really challenging. So with that, if you'd like to have a little bit more of this, I'll be happy to do this again. That AI issue is something that is really, really fascinating. I'll be happy to talk about it. So on Facebook, tell us you'd like to know something about it. Share this with your friends, and let's see where we can go. But the transition is really big. It's accelerating. You're going to see the next few months have some really interesting ups and downs, but it's going to continue. So how do you choose to view what's in front of you to take your next step? With that, blessings. Thank you.